Hello, welcome everyone. Aloha, Ainidao Living Conversations 141st, 141 sessions. I am with Sacred Blue Heron Women. I am Julian Katari. Today's topic is the myth of monogamy, which is a topic that we're starting to explore with. It's starting to be part of Owl Dojo investigations, and it's revealing a lot of things that are pertinent to a lot of different areas in life, and then hence how monogamy has somehow shaped us in the way we think and the way we act, and how if we want to become free, uh, we want to grow away from a domesticated and enslaved society, we need to take a look at this. So that's what we're doing today. And we have here Sacred Blue Heron Women with us, who is going to give us her investigations about this.
Right. So tonight we're going to focus on the concept of marriage and monogamy, but we have to realize this goes far deeper, like you said, Julian, into every area of our life. Like I mentioned last week, when I was a nurse, I was an ER nurse, but I went all over the hospital because I was a travel nurse, and that's how I could get more shifts, by being polyamorous as a nurse. So, but there's ICU nurses, there's ortho nurses, there's CCU nurses, and they don't talk. They all think they're above each other. So it becomes a war in the hospital because they're monogamous.
Yeah. It's also fragmentation, something, right?
Yeah. So think about how that translates in everyday life. The Mexican man that helped us with the bull last year, he does construction, but his company only does framing. Only framing.
Yeah.
Only framing. Only framing. Monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you look is monogamy.
Mm-hmm. Monomaniac.
Yeah. So we're going to focus tonight on marriage and monogamy, but we have to understand it goes so much wider and deeper than that.
Okay, yeah.
Romeo and Juliet, Tarzan and Jane, and of course Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Adorable, admirable, appealing, and mythic.
Mm-hmm.
In one form or another, the iconic image of the happy, naturally monogamous heterosexual twosome has been with us for a long time, and it has always been fiction. There is something downright inspiring to us, though, about that first couple sharing biblical bliss, although non-sexual, in the Garden of Eden, and when banished, striding out before eating an apple, striding out hand in hand, ready to confront the world as a committed couple. So we cling to this, right? However, evolutionary biologists and anthropologists know that reality is otherwise. Not only are we the products of evolution rather than special creation being our jealous God creating man out of dust and then putting him to sleep and taking a rib out of his side to create woman. Right? We also evolved, so we are the products of evolution rather than special creation. We also evolved in mating, being polygamous, polyamorous. The biological reality is that we were not ever made for monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
So when looking at our animal, flyer, and insect and creepy crawler sisters and brothers, we see mating forms of polygyny, which would be a male with a harem of women, and polyandry with a woman with a harem of males. Mm-hmm. But these are both very narrow lenses also to look at things. Okay. So both of these mating variants are fascinating, but they're also fundamental to being human. So the biological reality is that human beings are both polygynous and polyandrous.
Okay.
So a man wants to be with many women and a woman wants to be with many men.
Mm-hmm.
in attempting to maintain a social and sexual bond consisting of exclusively one man and one woman, aspiring monogamists are going against some of the most deepest-seated evolutionary inclinations with which biology has endowed most creatures, Homo sapiens included. So we're going against our natural strength, our natural being. Multiple mating is common in nature, and it doesn't just refer to the well-known tendency of males to seek out numerous sexual encounters, but to females also. Because that's another myth, is that females are only seeking one man, so one male to settle down with of the best genes, right? It's not true. So we'll do a little side topic here and say, what was a penis made for? Well, most of our answers are for urination and for semen, for ejaculation, right? No, it goes far deeper than that.
Yeah.
So for the circumcised man, and for the non-circumcised, if you pull back the foreskin, that little ridge is there to clean out the female vagina of any other semen, to make sure his semen gets there.
Okay.
Even in humans.
Okay, yeah.
This is why pigs have corkscrew penises and goats have, right? I've seen them all on this farm. It's because they mate, the females mate sequentially. They'll take as many men as they can, right? So every penis that goes in there, his job is to clean it out and make sure try to make sure his sperm gets there.
Yeah. That would make sense.
Yeah. So a multiple mating, right? We already talked about that. Isn't common in nature. I mean, is absolutely common in nature. So sexual monogamy has long asked to be accepted as inevitable, yet its contraindications suppressed in favor of its role are suppressed in favor of its role as the normative destiny of human relations. Yet, as such an enduring and widely accepted concept, it is far more prevalent in nature than perceived. Polygamy is sorry, I just realized my typing there was kind of crazy. So, polygamy, polyamory. So from approximately 4,000 mammal species on Earth, less than 5% practice any form of monogamy.
Okay. Birds, I think they say they do.
Huh?
Birds, I think, are some birds.
Very few.
Like
very
parrot.
few. And even those, there's infidelity. So one of the books I read was from a zoologist, and they've looked at all those. So even among human, only 43 of the 238 human societies on our planet are monogamous. Social monogamy was first established in ancient Greece and Rome, and as Christianity emerged in the Roman Empire, it took monogamy even further, insisting that two people must reserve their bodies and desires for only each other. So marriage then becomes an everlasting threesome with God. In fact, marriage, defined in terms of lifelong heterosexual, sexually exclusive monogamy, was a Catholic invention. And between Catholicism and Christianity, it then spread throughout the Western world, even as it struggled to justify its monolithic order on romance. 1022 was when Pope Benedict VIII banned marriage for priests. So there were numerous priests in the Catholic Church at that time who were married, and they all had to, if they wanted to remain priests, they had to leave their wives. Human beings can elect celibacy, and that has to be a denial, absolute denial. because it does not come naturally and requires saying no to something, a fire within. So you have to suppress that fire to be celibate. Thanks to recent developments in evolutionary biology, combined with the latest in technology, there is simply no question whether sexual desire for multiple partners is natural, because it is absolutely natural. Similarly, there is simply no question of monogamy being natural. It isn't. It is not natural. So the monogamous family is very definitely under siege, and it's not under siege by government, not by a declining moral fiber, and certainly not by some vast homosexual agenda, but by the dictates of biology, life itself. So infants have their infancy and adults have their adultery. Contrary to popular belief, humans did not evolve from monkeys. Survival of the fittest does not describe human societies, and the concept of evolution is not merely a theory. Evolution is the fact that life on Earth changes over time. It rolls like the wheel. That's what evolution is. Evolution, likewise, is not some finite process. It is perpetual, and humans and everything continue to evolve. Fundamentally, the standard sociobiological explanation for male-female differences is a matter of sperm and eggs. This is, in fact, how maleness and femaleness is defined. It's not defined by the presence or absence of breasts, beards, penises, or vaginas, and not even by who gives birth. It turns out that it is defined by whether one is an egg maker or a sperm maker, which has important consequences. However, that's a very limited view. So, for instance, a female human has one egg a month that can be fertilized, while a male human has at least 250 million sperm in each ejaculation. So the common concept is that sperm are cheap and readily replaced, and eggs are expensive and hard to come by. But this concept is derived from the concept of anisogamy, however you say that, which means different sized sex cells, big eggs, small sperm. So basically, the assumption in anisogamy is that females spend a lot of energy to produce a limited number of eggs and then make a high investment in rearing the young, whereas males produce lots and lots of cheap sperm. And so in polygyny, the males compete to spread their sperm and fertilize as many females as possible, and that then the concept is that females are choosy and pick only males that will either help them raise the offspring or will provide the best possible set of genes for the offspring. But the reality of biology for all animals, not just humans, is a lot more complicated and interesting than that. Work by biological anthropologists have shown that we humans have been cooperative breeders for a very long time. The idea that it is natural for one human female to raise her offspring alone or with just a single male is a very recent one indeed, and one that is not biologically supported. There's a very basic story that are told by many folks interested in the human nature of romantic relationship, is that the body is wired to find mates. So once the best biological mate is found, the brain and hormones kick in to create a particular kind of attachment drive, which is romantic love, Valentine's Day love, chocolates and nothing. So this leads then to the monogamous pair bond, offspring, and the natural family unit, a man, a woman, and their children. When you meet the right person for you, the evolved chemical cascade will lead you to a pair bond relationship. That is what we all think, what we've all been taught to believe. Christian-wise, the non-evolutionary version is pretty much the same. Just remove the chemical part and replace ideal biological mate with spiritual or soulmate. So that would be the New Age right? But underlying both these scenarios is the assumption shared by many evolutionary psychologists, as well as Judeo-Christian, Catholic, Muslim religions, and most people in the United States, that the bonded female-male pair with offspring is the evolved or natural unit of the human family, that marriage is a part of human nature, and there is a specific pair bond partner out there for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So this myth has justified the role of marriage and the nuclear family as primary to human nature. Yet there is no substantive anthropological, biological, or psychological support for the notion that there is a perfect match for everyone.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The concept that there are specific biological matches for people, and this made it romantic monogamous pair bond is what humans evolved to seek, is not supported at all by biology. There is substantive evolutionary evidence that humans and animals, birds, insects, snakes, creepy crawlers, do seek pair bonds. They do. They look for one primary, but then that's not it, right? That's not the end of the story. Pair bonds that are both social and physiological, but these pair bonds do not necessarily involve sex, marriage, exclusivity, or heterosexuality. It's kind of like what I talked about the Eskimos. They choose a mate because a hunter that goes out seal hunting needs a woman at home to keep or a partner at home to keep the fire burning and to take care of the skins as he brings them in, because otherwise one person can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not exclusive. So it makes life easier to pair bond, but that doesn't make them
Mm-hmm.
monogamous.
Okay, yeah.
So there is one theory out there that we can let percolate and see what inspiration comes. And this is that the basic system that acts to bond mammalian mothers to their infants has been expanded and co-opted in the human species to act as a social and physiological bonding system between individuals of all ages and sexes. This drive enables humans to form and experience types of social bonds that are not found to the same extent in most other animals. So we're expanding the breastfeeding mother bond to all of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And the hypothesis is that it is these bonds that have enabled humans to do better than almost any other organism on the planet. So to investigate this further, we really need to ask, what is love?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is that it is the biology underlying the ability to form multiple strong social bonds. However, this notion of love covers what we've reduced to love between parents, love between offspring, parents and offspring, love between siblings or other family members, and then between good friends, as well as between romantic partners. And so most of us are only interested in the romantic pair.
Mm-hmm.
So culturally, then we see romantic love as separate from all other kinds of love, and yet there's nothing biologically different between any of these loves. It's all just munai. It's all just love. It's all just munaiki, right? So what we're really trying to get at with romantic love is wanting to explain the specific strong relationship between two people that is called the pair bond.
Mm-hmm.
In biology, a pair bond is simply a predictable relationship between two adults. In animals, it's who they choose to copulate with first, right? So first copulation is their pair bond. And so we see it in the geese, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's couples, but they're constantly swapping. The reality is they're constantly swapping mates.
Okay. They're swingers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have more genders than geese, than females, we have a lot of fighting going on.
Okay.
So we try to keep them evenly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is often it's often asserted that this pair bond is the basis of human society.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look to our evolutionary heritage to see that it is a major early event in human history. However, pair bonds are not what we think they are, and they are not necessarily linked to procreation and the nuclear family.
Mm-hmm.
And research has shown that pair bonds are not the same as monogamy. So we find that there are typically two types of pair bonding. One is a social pair bond and one is a sexual pair bond, which
Okay.
makes it, right? So that means, okay, so in my third marriage,
Mm-hmm.
he was very bonded to his secretary at work, but he was sexually bonded with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get jealous about that, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll address that. Humans have both social pair bonding and sexual pair bonding, but they're not necessarily connected. And our
Mm-hmm.
sexual pair bonding is not limited to reproduction only.
Mm-hmm.
So pair bonds, both social and sexual in humans, are part of complex social networks that emerged as a core pattern in human evolution. So pair bonds are not the same, and marriage of marriage and, again, monogamy. Pair bonds does not equal marriage and monogamy. And we're going to say that over and over tonight. So over the last 5 decades, sufficient overviews of human mating patterns and sexual behavior have emerged to demonstrate that most humans today and in our evolutionary past did not mate monogamously across their lifespan. There is also a robust body of evidence that says monogamous marriage systems are not the same as monogamous mating systems. That even in monogamous marriage systems, there is a good deal of polygamous multiple partner mating going on.
Mm-hmm.
So for non-seasonally breeding animals and humans, monogamy means exclusive mating between two adults resulting in one or more offspring. This is the biological definition, and this type of mating system is actually rare in the animal kingdom. So in a cultural sense, monogamy is usually assumed to be an exclusive association between two adults sanctioned by marriage. Oh, no, sanctioned by the church. Marriage has, no, right, sanctioned by the church. So often extra pair sexual encounters by individuals in this arrangement are punishable by civil or religious law. At a time, there was a point where they were put to death, where we were put to death for having affairs outside of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So right away, we can see that there is a big problem between the biological reality of mating patterns and the cultural assumptions and laws of marriage patterns under which mating is sanctioned. Looking into history of marriage systems throughout the world, anthropologists, historians, and sociologists agree that in general, marriage in both secular and religious systems is best seen as a social system for legitimizing reproduction and inheritance of property, control and regulation of sexual activity, and the recently culturally sanctioned outcome of romantic love, which is marriage and divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual energy is the biological energy which in the psyche determines the character of human feelings and thinking. Sexuality is the productive life energy. Human needs are formed, altered, and in particular suppressed by society. So this process establishes the psychic structure of man. Sexual suppression produces a subordinate individual who simultaneously exhibits slavish obedience and rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be free. That's our common denominator. We all want to be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but to do that, we must know how we've been structured and what forces were used to create us. Our biological needs, food, water, shelter, and sexual pleasure, create the necessity for the community of humans. The conditions of reproduction that created then a community change the basic needs and create new needs then. This transformed needs and newly created needs in turn determine the further development of production and its means, tools and machines, right? And along with them, the social and economic relations. Based on these conditions of production, certain myths or ideas about human life, morals, philosophy, and more develop. The social ideology or myth thus created form the human structure that is turned into material force to be preserved in tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Capitalism and sexual suppression go together, hand in hand, monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as an ideology or myth has taken hold of and molded the human structure, it becomes a material social power. But it's a myth, a mirage.
Mm-hmm.
It was someone's idea.
Mm-hmm.
All it was. The nucleus of psychic structure is sexual structure, and the cultural process is essentially a process of sexual needs that serve to maintain life. So let's explore some myths, ideology about human nature that are powerful and have misled us into monogamy of all sorts. Because our entire lives revolve around monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
In our jobs, in everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of us believe that there is a specific set of biological differences between groups of people in the world. And many also believe that if you strip away the lies and let us self-regulate, we become beasts.
Mm-hmm.
With survival of the fittest and the bigger, badder, bolder, more aggressive vie for control and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the laws we have, and yet that is the norm for today, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
So what if we removed all those laws? So, and then of course we will know that it is natural for men and women to want and need different things from sex and personal relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So these beliefs are myths and ideology based on misinformation, partial truths, and the large dose of ignorance regarding what we know about our species. There is a popular perception of what human nature is, and in particular, views of race, aggression, and sex permeate our society. So these three key myths. Race. Humans are divided into biological races. Aggression. Removing laws created by the Catholic Church and all of Christianity, moral and cultural constraints reveal the violent beast within us.
Mm-hmm.
Sex. Men and women are truly different in behavior, natures, and desires and internal wiring. So these myths have led us to believe, again, that we as humans are naturally monogamous. We don't participate between races, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're violent and we're aggressive. Yet the actual truth is that we are polygamous, polyamorous, peaceful, and egalitarian in our innate natures. The truth is that we are polygamous, polyamorous, peaceful, and egalitarian. Mm-hmm. There is no such thing as fixed human nature, but rather an interaction between our genotypes, which is the genetic information we have, and the different environments we live in. So what we think of as normal, what we consider intuitive knowledge and common sense, rarely emerges from some inner biological core subconscious telling us what is true, rather than what is likely to be the result of experiences we have had throughout our lives. and in which way these events interact with and shape our influence and influence our bodies and minds. So, as early as 1930, an anthropologist recognized that we are influenced by the world around us and that simultaneously our emotions, desires, focused beliefs, and actions influence the world around us. So we're influenced by the world and we influence the world. And the keynote here is it's our emotions, desires, our focused beliefs, and then our actions that influence. So although we are biological organisms, the totality of our human experience can't be reduced to either specific, innate, biological, or external and environmental influence. It is the synthesis, the symbiosis of both. So we are nature nurtural. Being human is all about relationship. Firstly to ourselves, then others, and then the whole world. And being human is messy.
Mm-hmm.
We simultaneously are spiritual, biological, and then cultural beings with complex schemata and social lives that shape and populate our perceptions and beliefs. So again, we are nature nurtural. We're not a blank slate at birth, as we discovered last week with our subconscious programming. Rather, we are born as whole, complete organisms capable of self-regulation. We are a collection of organs, tissues, and cells generated by the interactions of DNA and all of our epigenetic and developmental processes. We are born into a suite of inherited ecologies, cultural patterns, social histories, and contexts that immediately become entangled with our spiritual biological structures and that then initiate a process of biocultural development. So we are nature nurtural. The idea of race represents one of the most dangerous myths in the world and one of the most tragic. We are different.
Mm-hmm.
We are different. We can see that. All we have to do is put a white person from Finland or America beside a black person from Africa or a native of Mexico or Honduras, and we see that. Or China or Korea. Oh yeah, there's big differences, right? Or First Nations. So obviously, we belong to different groups, and we have decided that these groups are called races. So if we look at a story from the Iroquois, they say there were lots of problems in the human race. So then many meetings were called by the elders to find a solution. And finally, a young man stood up and asked permission to speak. He said he'd been observing all life forms made by the Creator, and from that he had inspiration. The inspiration was that the Creator made a lot of water, yet some of it is called lakes, some of it is called rivers, some of it is called ponds, some of it is called streams, some of it is called oceans, some of it is called rain, some of it is called snow and ice, right? But it's all water. He said it's the same with birds, animals, and even the winds. The cold wind comes from the north. The warm wind comes from the south. The wet wind comes from the west. And the no planting wind comes from the east. But it's all wind. Mm-hmm. So he said that if people followed the example of nature, they would divide themselves into manageable working groups. And that is the story that brought about the clans of the Iroquois. So what if what we consider race is just really a clan, a manageable working group? How would that change our belief structure?
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom line is that humans are not divided biologically into distinct racial genetic cultures. There's no gene that divides blacks from white and Asians, and right? There's no distinct gene. There's no distinct DNA for that. We all share 99.9% of our DNA with each other. No group of people is or ever has been biologically homogeneous, monogamous, or pure. Furthermore, human populations are not and never have been biologically discrete, isolated, or fixed. So race is not biology, yet the myth of race affects our biology horribly, which is also related to monogamy, because like my opa, my abuelito said, oh yes, blacks are humans, but they don't dare marry my white daughters. Oh yes, I believe they're humans also, but no, I'll invite them home for dinner, but no, my daughters are not going to marry. Right? Monogamy. So as to the myth of aggression, human aggression is largely context-dependent, and non-pathological expression is frequently associated with anger or fear. So we can safely say that aggression, as humans exhibit, is not a single unitary trait, or even is it easily described as a physical or behavioral system that can be shaped by evolutionary pressures, like a tooth or bone is. So aggression is not found in our genes, and humans do not rely on aggression and violence more than on cooperation and mutualistic interactions, or Heine. That's just a myth that we're aggressive. Our bodies are in constant cooperation and mutualistic interactions, Heine. And so how could aggression and violence be in our genes? A common myth ideology belief is that men are by nature aggressive and belligerent, but they're protectors, like the Roman god of war, Mars, and that women are emotive, beautiful, vain, and fertile, like the goddess of love, Venus. So when we believe that, we expect that males and females speak different languages, have different desires and needs, and although they are the same species, they come from different planets. Especially since the book came out in the 90s, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? The bottom line is, the truth is that all humans, male or female, share the same bones, the same physical structures. We are the same species, and all our tissues are made of the same stuff. We've already addressed the fact that the tissue in my mouth and the man's mouth are the same as the tissue of my vagina. However, because we haven't been taught that, a male friend of mine was highly incensed when I told him that, like it was a put down for him to believe that the tissue in his mouth was the same as the tissue of my vagina. So what's the difference? The bodily tissues do not always take the same shape. So we have differences between females and females and females and males and males and males. But yet we are all made of the same stuff, even our genitals. We are simply variants of the same thing. We have biological differences stemming from reproductive biology and gender differences, but we have more similarities than differences. And the similarities are shared due to our shared evolutionary history as humans. However, in the conflict between instinct and morals, ego and the outside world, the organism is forced to armor itself against both the instinct and the outside world to restrict itself. And this armoring results in a more or less reduced capacity for living. So everyone who represses their sexuality develops their own particular form of moral and aesthetic self-protection, or armoring. And as soon as society assumes ownership of the means of production, it is inevitably confronted by the question of how human communal life should be regulated, whether it's regulated morally or freely. It is and has been the time for a very long time now to spend the moralistic regulation that we were born under and replace it with self-regulation, because that's what our bodies do. That's what all of nature does, which is Setai. So the goal of a cultural revolution is typically to create humans' character structures capable of self-regulation. The free self-regulated society will provide ample room and security for the gratification of natural needs and a morality that is life-affirming. However, the morality that we're governed under now is not life-affirming. It is life-suppressing. And to do this, we must distinguish between the natural biological drives and the secondary antisocial drives, which would be child sexual abuse, sex murder, etc., that are created by compulsory morality. Every moral regulation is in itself sex negating, and all compulsive morality is life negating. Think about this. We've already talked about how paying taxes is not honorable, it's moral.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Paying off debt, paying taxes. Pretty much everything we do is not honorable, it is moral. The compulsory
they're the same. Some would think that they're the same thing, honorable and moral.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. The compulsory morality of marital obligations and familial authority is a morality of cowards and impotent people who are afraid of life. People who are incapable of experiencing through the power of love what they try to procure through themselves with the help of money, marital laws, and the police. Through the connection of right succession, the passing on of the inheritance with procreation, the marital problem is firmly rooted in sexual life, and the sexual union between two people then ceases to be a matter of sexuality, but a matter of morality. And so in the long run, the wife's extramarital chastity and marital fidelity cannot be maintained without a high degree of sexual repression on her part. The rigid fidelity of the wife and the premarital chastity of the girl form the two pillars of a reactionary sexual morality which support patriarchal marriage and the family by creating a human structure characterized by sexual anxiety. And I have a friend who is absolutely full of sexual anxiety. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
After 20 years of marriage.
Okay.
How about what?
How would that anxiety manifest? What are the symptoms?
The inability that would be premature ejaculation, inability to even, right? Always seeking to suppress, to not be intimate.
Okay.
Or to be scared of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Monogamous marriage is the backbone of the authoritarian family, which is in turn the breeding ground for the authoritarian ideologies and character structure of the patriarchy. When conservative sexology, reactionary sexual morality, and the legal order continue to speak of the family as the basis of the state and society, they are correct, only to the extent that the compulsory family belongs inseparably to the authoritarian state and society. Its social importance is revealed in these three characteristics. Number one, economic. At the beginning of the capitalistic era, it was the economic unity of work, a role that still plays in peasant communities and small businesses. The family, right? The family made the small business go. The restaurants were owned by the small family-owned restaurants, the small family-owned businesses. Right? Two, social. It has the function of protecting the economically and sexually disenfranchised woman and her children. And three, it's political. In the pre-capitalistic times of private enterprise and in the early stages of capitalism, the family's immediate economic roots were in the family small business. And so now, this forms the educational apparatus through which every member of society must pass through from first breath on. And now the family has a dual function, dual political function. It reproduces itself by crippling people sexually. By maintaining the patriarchal family structure, it also preserves sexual repression and its results, which would be sexual neurosis, psychosis, and sex crimes. and it produces the authority-fearing, life-fearing vassal and constantly creates new possibilities where a handful of men in power can rule the masses. So official recognition of sexual gratification, irrespective of procreation, would suddenly overthrow all official and ecclesiastical conceptions of sexual life. And it's important to make clear that today there are no people or very few people with a fully developed, integrated sex affirmative structure, because all of us have been programmed and domesticated by the authoritarian, religious, sex-negating machinery of education.
Mm-hmm.
We do not want to force anyone to give up in Aloha Ainidao living, owl dojos. We do not want to force anyone to give up family life. But we also don't want to force anyone into it who does not want it. Mm-hmm. And those who think they can live their lives monogamously are welcome to do so, as well as those who want to live in the natural polyamorous sexuality. Mm-hmm. And we recognize that abstinence is actually dangerous and deleterious to health. Mm-hmm. So whoever wishes to live in abstinence with the risk of emotional illness or a decreased capacity to enjoy life is free to do so, because we do not wish to force anyone into a gratifying sexual life. We just want you to choose it. A gratifying sexual relationship between two people presupposes that an accommodation of the sexual rhythms takes place and two partners gradually learn to know each other's sexual needs. The capacity for an enduring sexual relationship presupposes, number one, full orgastic potency of both partners. Number two, the overcoming of infantile fears of sexuality. And three, no repression of any sexual impulses. Four, the absolute affirmation of sexuality and joy in living. And five, the overcoming of the basic elements of the compulsory moralism that runs our lives. And then number six, the capacity for intellectual companionship. Mm-hmm. The basic difficulty of any enduring sexual relationship, however, is a dulling of sensual desires while still growing a tender attachment to the other. So from a village in Africa where having more than one wife is the norm, my husband said, well, I find both of my wives equally beautiful, sensual, and desirable, yet after 3 days with one, on the fourth, I'm just suddenly weary of her. So I go to the other one, and she's just amazing. But after 3 days with her, on the fourth day, I'm tired of her, so I go back. I'm weary of her, so I go back to the first one. And it's the same. It's like monogamy is like requiring ourselves to eat the same food 3 times a day for 365 days a year for our entire lives. Mm-hmm. What would happen if we admitted this to each other, that this is the truth for all of us, mm-hmm. and welcomed more people into our lives, whether sexually and we can expand our view of what sex actually is, and not keep it just solely to genital. Mm-hmm. What would happen? You think we'd have peace? It's possible.
I think it has a lot to do with what is going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, to leave us with this, the establishment of a new life is predicated on recognizing the cognitive dissonance, the contradictions of the old one. And that's what we're doing with our sacred cow hole punching, mm-hmm. is to bring to light the cognitive dissonance, the contradictions that we've been raised with, that we've been programmed with, that we just seem to turn a blind eye to.
Mm-hmm. And that's how far we go here.
That's it for monogamy tonight.
So then it's a something that we're barely starting to touch on, and I'm wondering, are we going to go any further with this?
Not at this point, because there's a lot of the monogamy is based on what I started with, is that in the studies in animals is based on this, that sperm are cheap and expendable and eggs are expensive, and that doesn't, it's patriarchal, it just doesn't work. So there's not much more, but there's a whole lot more to explore with polyamory. With the love of many, which again does not just exist between humans. I mean, I have a polyamorous farm that bewilders people, because I have donkeys and I have pigs and I have goats and I have geese and I have ducks and I have turkeys and I have guineas and I have horses and I have cows and I have dogs, and I used to have bees, and we were all polyamorously happy till the bees left. But we're still polyamorously happy. But yeah, I mean, so this is why it goes to every area. It's not just strictly related to man and woman, or man, or woman. But we're so fixated on this marriage and the marriage license. And it's like I told my daughter, so if you find a man you want to be with, don't have a wedding. She doesn't want a wedding, but have a party. Have a party to celebrate your life-affirming relationship. And that I wasn't even thinking of polyamory at the time. So how about then you find another one who satisfies, who fulfills this part of you even better. So we're going to go into that with polyamory, and how it actually forces us to communicate better, to be more open with each other, to be more vulnerable with each other.
Wow.
And is more life enriching, to actually include many more people in our lives than just a little closed community of husband, wife, and children.
And that's what creates a true community.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who are willing to meet the needs of each other equally. And that's where the Incas lost, is because it was a top-down affair. It wasn't. They didn't seek to create the bond.
Cool. So that's going to be next week's conversation. Polyamory. Just straight up polyamory.
Polygamy.
Okay. And I like the fact that you included the Aloha Now Living position about this. You cleared that out, because this is prone to so many confusions. And you know what I've been observing is that there's this, of course, degenerative agenda by the people in the matrix, trying to push these, trying to make marketing on. I mean, it's good to just be cool and open and inclusive with anybody that has any type of sexuality, but then we're seeing this completely different kind of agenda of promoting and almost imposing transgender and gay relationships and whatever. So what I've been seeing, Ingrid, is very interesting. I like lately, because this has been going on for the last couple of years, very strong these last 2 years. And so now there's been a little bit of time where I can actually observe the effects of that. And what I'm observing here locally in Mexico, in Jalapa, is a lot of, instead of course, there's some people that go in there and little confused young people that, they think they have to be gay because they're seeing the gay flag everywhere. But I also see a lot of people that are like, this agenda, what is provoking is making people go back into these very monogamous type of view. I mean, it's making that side stronger.
Yeah, it's tried to, for
and
sure.
I know you're seeing that over there in the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
This agenda of faked liberation.
Yeah.
What it's doing is making this people like in the people here that wanted to create this community, and we can't even go into this subject because they're just so afraid of what is being shown to them by the matrix, that it drives them further back into their
Yeah.
Catholic kind of
Yeah.
worldview, and they want to just build a wall there, and they don't
Yeah.
want to. So the way you're presenting this, and the way that you're incorporating it into adult is fabulous. The way you're explaining it is very clear. You're it's not prone to any confusion. I like that, and I hope people listen to the whole thing. That's one of the things. You can't just listen to a little piece of the information. You have to listen to the whole thing, and obviously then anybody watching needs to come on the next session to know more about this, and so that we can dive further into explaining that it's not about imposing anything. It's simply opening up and seeing how these mind structures are affecting us in so many different areas, and that we
Right.
need to be open to reviewing that.
It's a giving of tools to say to first get you to understand that you were programmed. What, like we said last week, from the age of 0 birth to 5, none of your beliefs are your own. So as soon as you're willing to accept that and you start questioning, then this is tools to give you a way to find what you want to believe for yourself. So even the concept. So what is Aloha Aini Dao living? It is Aloha Aini Dao self-regulating communalism farming, where we share everything. We own everything together. Does this mean, like, there's this Dancing Rabbit Eco Village in Missouri that when you join them, you have to give up your vehicle, because giving up your vehicle will make a difference in the carbon bullshit? No. Means you still own your own vehicle. We're not going to ask you to give it up. We own the land together. We own the produce that we produce together. We share it equally between each other. And this is crafted by our owl dojos, where we learn this because we're looking to reconnect ourselves with our inner, innate, immortal divinity. And how do we do that? Through the owl body wings of Aloha Aini Dao, which already right there is polyamorous. Because the 99.9% of spiritual gurus out there would say, stay within your lineage. Stay within your lineage. You cannot combine Aloha Aini, and you cannot combine Hawaii, Andes, and the China. You just can't.
You can't take business away from me. It's got to stay with me. That's what they're saying.
Right. Yeah. No. But then you get a one-sided, a lopsided view if you stay within the lineage, and so, right. So that already connecting is, and again, we don't force anybody to take on beliefs. We're just using these as tools to guide you to forming your own beliefs and perceptions, so that you are truly self-regulated and not regulated by the Catholic Church, or the Seventh-day Adventist Church, or the Baptist Church, or the school, or your parents, or your wife, or your husband, or like.
Wow. Okay, so that's very thorough, and we'll
or by your
continue.
subconscious.
Yeah, and glad we're touching this now, and so no changes in the time, and nothing else to add, I guess.
Nope.
Nothing else to say, but lots of blessings, waterfalls of blessings for everyone, and we'll see you next session.
Yeah, next week.
Bye-bye.